All right, so this is the moment that we have dreaded all week. We have to look at this all 22 for this Browns game. And what I wanted to do today, because I think what I want to focus on and what I try to focus on this channel is not just Browns content for the sake of it, not just criticism for the sake of criticism. I try to be informative to the best of my ability, and I try to be constructive, right, and fair with my criticism, because that's what I would want out of sports content, and I think there's a lot of people who would want that out of sports content as well. So the defensive problems or their own defensive problems, that's a whole nother video, and we'll do that later on. But today, we're focusing on some Baker Mayfield-centric questions, right? The first question: why does it seem like Baker Mayfield is allergic to wide receivers? I get this question all the time. So what I'm setting out to prove here is, one, is this true? Is he allergic to wide receivers? Two, if it is true for at least this year, what are some of the factors that are going into that? And three, who's really to blame for this? Now, spoiler warning, it's not one person. But there's an interesting amount of stuff happening on this offense. Now, first things first, why is Baker not throwing to wide receivers as much in this year as he has in years past? Well, one of these things are really just about decision making and being aggressive. And, last year he was aggressive in some situations. This year, not as aggressive. And you're going to see this here. And that's something that happens a lot in this game. See, the Browns are going to run a zone beater. And, there's a window there. Now, this is a mirror concept route, so both of these routes are going to mirror each other, Jarvis and Donovan Peoples-Jones here. But the ideal here is that the Patriots are in a zone, looks like 2 under, and there's going to be a pass off between this guy who's going to go curl flat and this guy who's going to pick this up, or this guy who's going to pick this up. The ideal is that there's going to be a window at the pass off, right? So you want to hit that window and you want to attack it. And the reason you mirror these routes, one second, let me get a smaller dot. The reason you mirror these routes is because if they're running the same defense on both sides, which doesn't happen every play, but it looks like that's what the Patriots are doing. See, it's mirrored. Same here. Same here. They're not running like a cover 6 or something that's out of alignment. So the ideal is whether you go left or right, you can't be wrong because you can hit that window there, hit that window. Now, this is when it comes out that the Browns are a rhythm and timing offense, right? That's a big buzzword. This is what that's about. There are certain windows that are going to be open versus zone. Now, honestly, when you're playing against zone, it's all rhythm, right? That's what rhythm quarterbacking is. You get that one thrown around a lot. Tom Brady is going to be in rhythm because teams don't want to play man on him. They play zone. And then, to beat zone, you got to be in rhythm because you got to make anticipatory throws because look what happens here. Right? You see the pass off? There is a window between when Matt Judon and this gentleman, number 54, I know that's a famous player, or at least used to be a famous player, but I'm blanking on the name right now. There is a window between when he's going to pass this off and go curl flat because this defender is going to go downfield. Same thing with this defender, right? Because this is essentially almost going into quarters. So there's going to be a pass off between here, 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 and here. And you're going to see both are going to flash open. And, Baker has to take advantage of that. Those are 2 wide receiver routes, and the reason even though this is a completed ball to, I think, Austin Hooper, the reason I harp on stuff like this is football is not an analytical game. It's not exclusively an analytical game. Analytics has its place in football, but it's also a people game. And just like in basketball, if you're going to run the fast break a lot, if you're not going to have a lot of post touches for your big man, you want to be able to get him on the fast break and let him get some free dunks, let him get some free points. Even if you could have scored, you want to let the other guy score because you want to make sure that they can stay engaged in the game because you're asking that dude to make a lot of sacrifices. In this offense, you ask the wide receivers to make a ton of sacrifices. So the least you can do is hit them on plays, the few plays that you have where they're designed to get the ball. And they're open, right? He should hit them on those situations. So that's a situational where we see all this stuff going on between Baker and the wide receivers and why the wide receivers aren't having fun. Baker isn't giving them their layups, right? Like that's all you have to do in this kind of offense. You don't have to target the wide receiver 80 times to make them happy. You just got to give them their layups. And that's what happened with Odell and didn't give him his layups enough. That's what's happening with Jarvis. This was going to happen with Donovan Peoples-Jones a few years down the line. If you don't give your wide receivers these layups, they're going to become disinterested in this offense, and you can't blame them because people play football to affect the game, not to run routes and not get the ball at the end of the day. So this is one of those things. This is a people management thing that the Browns have to get a hold of, the quarterback and the head coach, right? You got to give your wide receivers the layups when they are there to be had. And that's a play where it was there to be had. And you missed it. You got 9 yards, but you missed the bigger picture. That's an issue. All right. And we're going to see this from the back angle, just in case you don't believe me that these things flash open. They do. Wide open. Watch Judon. He's all red there. And you're going to see not only Peoples-Jones, but more specifically Jarvis Landry, right? That's the one that's wide open because the linebacker is going to follow. Let me rewind this back a little bit. But the linebacker is going to follow Hooper, which should have gave Baker the read. Hey, okay, you're following him. Now, Baker's seeing this as, oh, Hoop's beat his man. Let me get the ball to Hoop. But what he should say, and what could also be the right answer, is Hoop beat his guy. That's going to clear out a huge wide angle for who else but Jarvis Landry, who comes across your screen. Got to give the dudes their layups when they're there to be had. Or else you're just going to get this. Another reason why Baker's not having a ton of production to wide receivers is simply because the wide receivers aren't featured in this offense and aren't on the field as much as other run-heavy offenses, right? This is an empty set. You would assume this is 5 wide by looking at this, but that assumption would be wrong because this is Dearness Johnson, a running back. Believe this is Jarvis Landry, and maybe that's Peoples-Jones, but that's a tight end, and that's a tight end. So 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers, 1 running back, and empty. Now, this isn't a flawed concept or anything, but when you see this on TV, you think that's 5 wide. Okay, a wide receiver has to get the ball in order for it to be a completion. But this is essentially the same personnel that you would run single back out of on this team, right? The 2 wide receivers, the 2 tight ends, 2 wides out, and then a running back in the backfield. So even their shotgun sets are done with the same personnel that they have in heavy run situations. So that's another thing. There's not just that, right? There's more than just that. Let me get to it. So that's example of one package and one way the wide receivers get taken out of this. This is another one. This is a play action boot. And by design, the wide receiver, there's 1 wide receiver. There's let me get this back on track. There are 1, 2, 3 tight ends. 3 tight ends. So this is 12 personnel, 3 tight ends. And this is a boot to this side of the field with the 1 wide receiver being the decoy. So he was never going to get the ball over here. So this guy out the play. It's a half-field read. It's 1, 2, 3, and they're all tight ends. This is why the production to non-wide receivers is low. Because, 1, wide receiver heavy personnel just don't exist in this offense. Maybe they run like 2 of them the whole game. And most of the time they do have a heavy wide. Like there was like a couple of times in the first quarter they had 3 or 4 wide receivers on the field. They ran out of those packages, right? So they don't pass out of those packages a lot. So that's why when you hear people specifically talk about Baker Mayfield's production to tight ends, I don't know if it's the reflection that people are making it out to be that Baker can't throw to wide receivers. I think it's more of a reflection of how the offense is structured and built, because the wide receivers just aren't designed to get the ball. Now, whether you think that is a fatal flaw in this offense or not, that remains to be answered. I'm not going either way on that conversation. But this is why the production is low to wide receivers, because they're not on the field that much. And I have numbers that can support this. We're going to go one more picture of a formation here just to hammer this point home absolutely on what I mean. This is a goal line set. No wide receivers to be fine, right? This is a flat line, 1, 2, 3, 4 extra linemen, fullback, running back. This is a run the ball set. I think they actually passed out of this formation because I think this was a play action or something. But again, they feature a lot of packages that just don't have wide receivers out there in large mass. And even when they are out there, it's debatable whether they're supposed to be a productive part of the play. And when I say productive part, intended wide receivers on these plays, unless the play breaks down. Now, I said I had numbers to support what I'm saying. Well, check these numbers out. The Browns' top wide receiver in just snaps is Donovan Peoples-Jones. He has 366 snaps, and 220 of those 366 are passing snaps, so on passing plays that happen. So that's a really low number. And then of those 220 passing snaps, he's only been targeted 23 times. Now, if you want a reference point, let's use two very run-heavy teams in the Baltimore Ravens and the Tennessee Titans. Nobody here is going to say that those teams aren't run first. The Baltimore Ravens, their top wide receiver in snap, Hollywood Brown, 500 snaps. 359 of those passing. Hollywood Brown almost has more passing snaps than the Browns' top wide receiver has snaps. And that's just the wide receiver with the most snaps. Of those snaps, 79 targets compared to Donovan Peoples-Jones is 23. A.J. Brown, the top wide receiver in snaps for the Titans, 67 targets. That averages out to 7.5 a game. Marquise Brown gets 9 targets a game. Now, there's not a lot of people that will tell you that Jarvis Landry is not in the same class of receiver as Marquise Brown. But yeah, Marquise Brown, 9 targets a game. You want to know what Jarvis Landry gets? 5 targets a game. The Browns' most targeted wide receivers, well, wide receiver is Odell Beckham still at 34 targets. Hooper had like 33. Both of those dudes would be 3rd and 4th by a significant margin and almost 5th by a small margin on the Baltimore Ravens. This is not a pass-heavy team. So that is the issue on why the wide receiver targets aren't there. They're not designed to be there. And again, whether you think that's good or bad, I would argue the first 11 weeks of this season kind of paint a picture that this is not a great strategy, and that targeting these wide receivers would probably be more efficient for this offense. But also, I don't know what's going on behind it, right? Is Baker being injured part of this? Is this Kevin Stefanski not trusting the wide receiver? Is there some kind of beef going on? But all I know is that the Browns wide receiver targets and snaps are significantly lower than even run-heavy teams that the Browns play or that are in the NFL. So that honestly answers that question for me. Why doesn't Baker target these wide receivers? Because for whatever reason, I don't think he's supposed to. And I don't know why that is. And if it were just the wide receiver packages and snaps were normal, and they weren't getting targeted, I would think, okay, maybe he doesn't trust the wide receivers. The fact is that their snaps aren't normal. Their targets aren't normal. And I think that has to do with more of what the offense is designed to do. And it's designed not to have a ton of targets to wide receivers. And even other teams that run similar run-heavy offenses target wide receivers much more often than the Cleveland Browns. And it's no mistake that both of those teams are much better right now than the Cleveland Browns as far as their record goes. So I don't think the Browns are like hitting on something right at 5-5 with performances of 7 points and 10 points in the last 3 weeks with this strategy. I just don't think it's a great strategy. I don't know why this is the strategy, but this appears to be the strategy. We'll find out. Now, maybe this is just for one game, but honestly, those are season-wide numbers, so even that excuse doesn't really fly. So, that's part of the issue, right? Another part of the issue on why this wide receiver production is low is drops, right? This is a ball that Donovan Peoples-Jones should be caught. He drops it. And it's not like the Browns have a disproportionate amount of drops. They're about 11th, tied for 11th with like 8 other teams in the NFL with like 11 drops or something like that. So it's not a disproportionate amount of drops. It's not leading the league or top 5 in any means. But when the targets are as low as the Cleveland Browns have for these wide receivers, it makes those drops just stand out more because that's probably a significant percentage of the targets to wide receivers have been drops. And it's only because the targets are way lower than most teams' targets are. Don't know why. Like, if we don't think any of these wide receivers can catch, that is a failure on Andrew Berry. But I don't think that's the case, right? I think they think that these wide receivers can catch. Again, a whole lot of why going on with the offense at this point. Now let's talk about Baker Mayfield just needing to play better, right? That's the third part of this equation, is that Baker Mayfield needs to play better. This is a prime example. I don't understand this play call on 3rd and 7, and I don't understand this play design because either somebody ran the wrong route, that's always something that can happen, or this is the weirdest play call of all time. Now, they're going to have pretty much like a weird little mesh thing going on underneath this. Remember, this is 3rd and 7. The line is here. They have 1, 2, and this guy's kind of cheating and edging here on the line here. So, yeah, these two guys are open, but it's 3rd and 7. You're on your own 20, so it's not go for it territory. And, Schwartz is a 50-50 proposition to catch the ball, let alone to get any kind of extended runoff. And then that's Andy Janovich, who, I don't think he's going to take this thing from the line of scrimmage and get a first down. So, if this play was designed to get these two open, that's really weird because the Patriots would gladly just give you that for free. And that's why they're in, this 2 under or it was a 3 shell because this guy's going to follow. So these guys are 2 deep safeties. But what makes even less sense is, it looks like man actually, but what makes less sense is you design this with David Njoku running straight into Donovan Peoples-Jones. Now, I'm just going to go off on the benefit of the doubt and say maybe Donovan Peoples-Jones was supposed to run a curl and he took it longer to get past the sticks, which threw off the whole alignment. I am willing to say that. Either way, this is bad. This is a bad decision. I don't get this decision from a play calling standpoint. I don't get why Baker Mayfield fired this ball as confidently into that as he did. The only thing I understand on this play is why it got intercepted, which is you threw right into the teeth of the defense. And then it's almost a pick 6. Whole lot of why. Again, that's bad. That's weird play design. I don't know if it's bad play design. I don't know enough about play design, to be honest with you, to tell you that's horrible play design because maybe something went wrong there. But I don't understand what's going on here. Maybe somebody can clarify this with me in the comment section. Now, this is another significant part where Baker has to be better. It's cover 3. And again, much like we talked about earlier, there's going to be a trade-off here, right? Where, is it 54 in this play? I believe it's 54. But one of these linebackers, I'm going to just say him, is going to have to take this flat where this guy is, and he's going to take this space. In that exchange, there is a window here, and the same thing is true here, right? These two have to exchange spaces. There's a window here, and there's a window here. The Browns are running a double seam, dual tight end seam. This is built to beat cover 3 because you're trying to fit it in that window. And maybe if you're really frisky and like Brett Favre in his prime, there's a small window in between both safeties. If you get one leaning and you got this guy leaning, you can cheat over, have your eyes this way, and just fit it into one of these two windows. Baker has his eyes in the right place, just doesn't pull the trigger on hitting any of these windows. And what could have been a 20-yard play turns into a negative yard play because, again, Baker's got to play better than this, right? See what I mean? Boom, you see the exchange? You see the exchange? Now, Hooper's going to flash super open. But again, that safety's cheating on that side, so that's why Baker's eyes are on the other side of the field. But even then, right, you see the exchange. There's 8 and 54 at the bottom of your screen. So he's going to go here. 54 is going to pick up. Well, no, it's the other way around. My bad. But, you know, they're exchanging coverages. There's going to be a window here. Hooper's going to pop wide open around here. And the same exact thing is going to happen on the top of your screen. And you're going to see both of these seams be wide open. Hoops open. And then on the other side, this window just popped open right here because this is the exchange here. If you fit a real tight ball in there, you can fit it. Now, this is good coverage by him. He can come in and make a play here. It's more open on this side, but again, I get why the eyes were here because you got the safety leaning there. You're going to assume that if this is a split field read, that's going to be more open. So, you know, you got this window, that window, and honestly, that window is so open that you could come around and still hit him. And he almost does pull the trigger on that, but he never pulls the trigger. Again, you got to pull the trigger. You got to throw the ball. Right? That's the biggest thing. Because that's open in the NFL. Both of those guys are open. You have both windows open, right? So there's that first window I talked about that's open. Oops. There's that first window I talked about that was open right here. And then there's that second window that's open right around the crease in between these zones. Again, Austin Hooper's still open. Both of those windows on that seam. You make that throw, and by this point, you're down enough to where the interception don't matter. So just pull the trigger, bro. But, you know, hey, you don't make that play. You double pump. You hesitate. Now it's not open. Now you got to scramble, and you lose 2 yards. And you're behind the sticks on second down. And again, it was wide open, right? I'm not trying to sound like Odell's father, but this is a missed opportunity. You see Hoop open. You can't see Njoku open, but, you know, they're both open. They're both open. Scramble out. They're not open anymore. And this is the most frustrating part. You get the same exact look. This is the same cover 3. There's going to be the same exchange windows, right? Same exact play. Seems. And we have seen them not execute on this play all game. This is the third seam play that we have talked about that the Browns have tried to hit in this cover 3. And they have not been successful, not because they can't do it or they weren't open. These are good play calls, but because it's just not executing. So this time Baker sees it, fires it off right into David Njoku, hits that first exchange window, and David just drops it. Even when you right, you can't be right. This is what happened the whole damn game. And I don't know what to make of it. I don't know how seriously to take it. All I know is that was an awful watch. This film was very painful to watch. But, you know, I'm just going to chalk this up, hopefully, as a turd. Now, they've laid a few turds this year, so we know that it's not above them to lay a turd. But this is just one of those games where everybody sucked. Everybody sucked on the offensive side of the ball. Nobody stood out. Everybody sucked. You might have one or two performances that you want to pat on the back and celebrate, and that's cool. But in large part, at the end of the day, 7 points. Everybody on the offense sucked. It was a whole contributing thing. And this whole Baker Mayfield doesn't throw the wide receivers thing, it kind of gets reported inaccurately because it's not that he doesn't throw the wide receivers. It's that these wide receivers just aren't on the field a lot. And that's a bigger issue, in my opinion. And that points to specifically Alex Van Pelt at this point, and maybe even Kevin Stefanski. But I would assume Alex Van Pelt would be more hands-on with that personnel packaging and the playbook and everything else. We know Kevin's in charge of the play calling. But, don't know whose fault it is 100%, but Baker has a good amount of it. Alex Van Pelt has a good amount of it. Kevin has a good amount of it. Wide receivers have a good amount of it, and the tight ends. So that's the offensive breakdown. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.